The film begins by showing a SWAT team on a mission at an abandoned factory. At that time, they are tasked with capturing a counterfeit money dealer who has been troubling the public recently. During the process, they rely on a stone surveillance robot to record all transactions, and once the transaction is completed, the SWAT commander immediately deploys his team to arrest all the perpetrators. Unfortunately, the dealer they are targeting manages to escape in his car. Not staying idle, Yuan, as the SWAT captain, immediately pursued the dealer, cornering him so he couldn't escape the factory area. Therefore, the dealer entered the factory to hide from Yuan and the other SWAT members. Unfortunately, the factory he enters is a chemical plant, preventing Yuan from using his weapon freely, as firing it could cause an explosion. As a result, Yuan must find a way to stop the dealer. While Yuan is searching for the dealer, his subordinate Li Wei arrives to assist him. Thanks to their good teamwork, they easily capture the target, and the dealer was taken to the police station for interrogation. After investigating his background, the police discover that the dealer's name is Chun Sanfu, who is known to have many businesses besides counterfeit money. Additionally, he is connected to a mafia member named Cha, who is also involved in counterfeit money printing. It is rumored that Cha has a big boss whose identity is still unknown. Therefore, the police plan to use Chun Sanfu to capture the mafia. Elsewhere, a group of mafia members gather to discuss Chun Sanfu, who has a bad track record in the business. However, they are unaware that Chun Sanfu has been captured by the police. To ensure their business doesn't collapse, they plan to meet Chun Sanfu in person, as they have never met him face-to-face. The next day, the police hold an important meeting, where the officials praise Yuan as the best person on the SWAT team. Therefore, they decide to assign him another task, which is to disguise himself as Chun Sanfu to deceive the mafia, especially the big boss the police are targeting. Upon hearing this, Yuan accepts the mission without any complaints. It turns out Yuan immediately accepts the mission because he wants to escape reality, as he has just had a failed engagement with his girlfriend, Xiao Fei, due to her parents' disapproval. Not long after, Yuan meets Cha at an entertainment venue wearing a red suit and sunglasses, walking like Chun Sanfu. Upon entering the meeting room, Yuan acts arrogantly towards Cha to make his disguise convincing. However, Cha is still doubtful that the person in front of him is Chun Sanfu. To prove it, Cha gave him a mix of real and fake money and asked Yuan to distinguish between them. Additionally, he also asked Yuan to hand over the special ink used for printing money, but Yuan said he wouldn't give it for free. Hearing this, Cha became furious and almost attacked Yuan. However, because he needed the ink, Cha tried to calm himself down. At that moment, Yuan said that he wanted to meet the big boss first. Only after that would Yuan promise to hand over the special ink. Having no other choice, reluctantly, Cha accepted the condition and took Yuan to the bus terminal, as they had to blend in with regular people to avoid suspicion. On the other hand, Li Wei, who was patrolling around the terminal, was puzzled when he saw his superior walking with gangsters. Without Yuan knowing, his prospective father-in-law, who had once rejected him, named Mr. Yang, was also there. To avoid blowing his cover, Yuan continued acting arrogantly even when talking to the elder. Initially, the situation on the bus was under control until Li Wei's arrival disrupted it. It turned out, Li Wei seemed to suspect that Yuan was being held captive by the gangsters, and unfortunately, Cha, who noticed the arrival of the SWAT member, became suspicious. Cha then ordered his men to capture Yuan, Li Wei, and Mr. Yang. Additionally, Cha and his men hijacked the bus and took all the passengers hostage. Because of this, Yuan was furious with Cha's behavior, which endangered innocent lives, but Cha didn't care at all. On the other side, the police began to worry that Yuan's cover had been blown, especially since his tracking signal had disappeared because Cha had destroyed Yuan's glasses, which served as a GPS and hidden camera. Without further ado, the police chiefs deployed a team to locate him. At the same time, Cha's men were seen tying up Mr. Yang's hands to prevent him from escaping or resisting. Mr. Yang, who was skilled in kung fu, quickly seized the gangster's weapon, but his attempt to fight back failed as Cha's men managed to defeat him. After this rebellion, Cha decided to take Yuan, Li Wei, and Mr. Yang to a remote forest. This forest turned out to belong to the big boss, who also had a hidden headquarters there that the police had never discovered. At that moment, the identity of the big boss was finally revealed, a mafia named Li, who had many illegal businesses spread throughout China. Li also had a vast international network, which was why the Chinese government struggled to capture him. At the same time, Li was seen torturing a subordinate who had rebelled. On the other hand, the police chiefs received a report that Cha and his gang had captured not only Yuan but also Li Wei and Mr. Yang. Because of this, the police chiefs felt disrespected by the gangsters and ordered their subordinates to find a way to rescue Yuan and the other two. Meanwhile, Yuan continued to play his role as Chen Sanfu in front of Li, and since he had already been branded a policeman, Yuan claimed to be a corrupt cop. To prove it, Yuan ordered Cha to lock up Li Wei and Mr. Yang separately, while pretended not to care about the two. Seeing Yuan's convincing actions, Li finally trusted him and contacted his mafia subordinates via video conference to instruct them to immediately pay Yuan, as he had promised to hand over the printing ink once the money was deposited into his account. At the same time, Mr. Yang quickly freed his hands thanks to his cleverness before luring Li's subordinates into the room. Not long after, Yuan was showing Li samples of other items for sale besides the special ink for printing counterfeit money. Unbeknownst to them, Mr. Yang had seized a weapon from one of Li's subordinates and began taking out the guards there one by one. Mr. Yang then rescued Li Wei and gave him a weapon so they could save Yuan and escape from the forest. The two of them moved closer to Li's headquarters, observing the surroundings and silently eliminating any guards they encountered. Meanwhile, Li was checking counterfeit money printed using Yuan's special ink, and the result was identical to Chen Sanfu's counterfeit money. Naturally, this made Li and the mafia member happy because they could soon circulate the money throughout China. Without further ado, Li ordered Cha to process the money transfer to Yuan's account. At the same time, Yuan had secretly observed the hard disk stored in the suitcase, which seemed to be strong evidence to capture the mafia. After the transaction was completed, Li played dirty by ordering Cha to eliminate Yuan. Fortunately, Yuan quickly realized this, and a fight ensued. When Yuan was cornered and about to be killed by Li and his men, Mr. Yang suddenly appeared and attacked Li and his men with rapid gunfire. As Mr. Yang and Yuan managed to escape, Cha realized that they had taken the important hard disk from the suitcase. Knowing this, Li deployed his men to chase Yuan and the others before they exited the forest. On the other hand, the SWAT team had been dispatched to Li's forest area. However, due to the vastness of the place, the chiefs entrusted the mission to a captain experienced with difficult terrains, where the captain's primary task was to rescue the 3 people captured by Li. Elsewhere, Li was seen contacted a skilled sniper to assist in capturing Yuan and his companions. Back with Yuan, Mr. Yang, and Li Wei, who were still trapped in the forest while Li's men had spread out to every exit. At that moment, Mr. Yang acted like a captain skilled in strategy, which made Yuan and Li Wei curious about his past. Additionally, Mr. Yang had impressive high-level kung fu skills and managed to neutralize several of Li's men. Because of this, Mr. Yang led Yuan and Li Wei to raid the mafia's weapons warehouse. At that moment, Yuan became increasingly curious about who Mr. Yang really was, but he refused to answer and tended to ignore the question. Apparently, Mr. Yang still did not approve of Yuan's relationship with his only daughter. Meanwhile, the SWAT team and Li's men continued to move through the forest. Not long after, Li Wei began to doubt whether the path chosen by Mr. Yang was the right way out, leading to an argument about the direction. Suddenly, someone shot at them and it was Gasang, a sniper sent by Li earlier. At the same time, the gunfire immediately revealed their location to the SWAT team, prompting them to cautiously head that way. Meanwhile, Li's forces, led by Cha, were also moving in the same direction. Before Cha and his men arrived, Yuan and his companions set up mines and traps around them. At that moment, Yuan was once again puzzled because Mr. Yang could make very complex mines, something even he, as a SWAT captain, couldn't do. Because of this, Yuan began to suspect that his former prospective father-in-law had a military background. But just as Yuan was about to ask, Cha and his men suddenly arrived and attacked them. Fortunately, Yuan and his companions were able to avoid the attacks thanks to the mines set up by Mr. Yang. They then racked their brains to find another hiding place since Cha brought tracking dogs. Meanwhile, at the military post, the chiefs were planning a strategy to rescue Yuan and his companions. However, it seemed that Li's men had already taken control of the entire forest. 2 hours later, Yuan, Li Wei, and Mr. Yang were still walking through the forest. Eventually, Mr. Yang noticed that Yuan's leg was injured. Although he had once rejected him as a son-in-law, Mr. Yang still cared about him due to his sense of humanity. When they were at a dead end, Yuan decided to change the plan, where he would lure Li and Cha to capture him, as Yuan had the hard disk they were looking for. When they approached, Yuan entrusted Li Wei and Mr. Yang to attack Li and Cha. Before executing the mission, Mr. Yang said he needed to set up another trap in the middle of the forest to reduce the number of Li's men. At the same time, the SWAT team directed a drone to track Yuan and his companions from above. Unfortunately, Gasang found them first and shot Li Wei. Sadly, Mr. Yang and Yuan failed to save Li Wei. Now, they had no choice but to hide amidst the onslaught from Gasang. Because Yuan was injured, Mr. Yang took the initiative to stop the bleeding so he wouldn't bleed out to death. Meanwhile, Cha and his forces began to close in on their hiding place. To avoid capture, Mr. Yang threw a smoke bomb to block their path, and another shootout ensued. When they were surrounded, Yuan decided to lure Cha and his men toward the trap. Once they were trapped, Yuan rose again and shot them one by one. Unfortunately, in the fierce battle, Mr. Yang was hit by a grenade explosion, causing him to fall to the ground. Seeing this, Yuan panicked and spontaneously called out to him as father. Surprisingly, Mr. Yang got back up despite his bloodied body. At the same time, Mr. Yang could see the sincerity within Yuan, and thanks to him, Mr. Yang was now able to fight fiercely again. During the intense shootout, Yuan nearly died from an enemy grenade explosion, but fortunately, he got back up just like Mr. Yang did. Seeing this, Mr. Yang felt very proud because Yuan was also very strong like him. However, they began to run out of ammunition, leaving them with no choice but to leave immediately. Unfortunately, Mr. Yang stumbled into a hole while running. Seeing this, Yuan tried to pull him back up, but Mr. Yang urged him to escape first. At least one of them had to survive this battle, and before Yuan left, Mr. Yang said that this time, he would give his blessing for him to be his son-in-law. Therefore, Yuan had to survive to marry his daughter. Hearing this, Yuan was moved and promised to come back to save him. After his prospective son-in-law left, Mr. Yang was finally captured by Cha and his men. This prompted Cha and his men to torture him because he refused to reveal Yuan's location. Meanwhile, Yuan had disguised himself as one of Li's men and successfully infiltrated the mafia's headquarters. When the opportunity arose, Yuan quietly took down Li's henchmen one by one. Additionally, he took a walkie-talkie to contact the SWAT headquarters and relay the coordinates of Li's headquarters. At the same time, Li received a report about an intruder in his headquarters. Because of this, Li immediately ordered Cha to hang Mr. Yang from a tree. Additionally, Li also instructed Gasang and his other men to stand guard at every corner of the headquarters. Apparently, Yuan saw what was happening, so he decided to surrender himself and promised to hand over the hard disk as long as Li released Mr. Yang. Without hesitation, Li ordered Cha to release him. At the same time, Yuan pleaded with Mr. Yang to leave the forest immediately, while he would face Li and his men alone. Just as Yuan was about to approach Li, the SWAT team suddenly arrived. Besides the SWAT team, Li Wei also came to help Yuan. It turned out that Li Wei was still alive because the SWAT members had saved him. Unfortunately, as Li Wei was about to join Yuan and fight, he was shot and died instantly. Seeing this, Yuan was very angry and sad, as Li Wei was his most enthusiastic subordinate who had never let him down. Yuan then picked up a rifle and went on a rampage. With the help of SWAT, Yuan finally managed to defeat the enemy forces. Now, only Li and Cha were left, as they ran toward a cave to avoid the assault. Realizing this, Yuan decided not to let them escape so easily. After taking down Cha, Yuan searched for Li inside the cave, but it turned out the mafia leader had managed to take Mr. Yang hostage. At that moment, Li threatened to kill Mr. Yang if Yuan didn't immediately hand over his hard disk. Having no other choice, Yuan quickly threw a hard disk covered in cloth to lure Li into releasing Mr. Yang. But when the cloth was removed, it revealed not a hard disk but a rock. While Li was still stunned, Yuan attacked him immediately. As a result, the SWAT team then handcuffed Li and took him to face justice. Not long after, Yuan was surprised when the police chief saluted Mr. Yang. It was revealed that his prospective father-in-law was a former honored Special Forces commander who had made significant contributions to the country. His name was well known among police and military officials. Hearing this, Yuan felt happy to have such an impressive prospective father-in-law. Before going home, Yuan handed over Li's hard disk to the police chief for legal processing. At the same time, Xiaofei arrived and immediately hugged him. The film ends. Moral lesson from the story: always carry a rock in your pocket. You never know when it might help you pretend it's a hard disk and save the day. Remember, if your father-in-law is a kung fu master, your engagement problems are the least of your worries.